The guard's knife sliced through the ribbon, and my hand closed around his wrist. The blade stopped an inch above the ivory box I had carried into the Moretti mansion. Beneath the chandelier's amber light, polished black marble reflected for armed men, a brass security table, and my own pale face. The foyer smelled of cedar smoke and antiseptic. "Let go," the guard said. "Step away from my patient's property," I replied. His wrist hardened beneath my fingers. Somewhere upstairs, a medical monitor kept time with soft electronic beeps. I had been hired that morning as the private hospice nurse for Lucia Moretti, the 78-year-old matriarch whose doctors had given her only months. The contract paid enough to cover my younger brother's hospital bills, but I had not yet signed it. At the top of the staircase stood the man who controlled whether I ever would. Adrian Moretti descended without hurrying. At 37, he wore a charcoal suit with no tie, his dark hair swept back from a face that seemed shaped for issuing final decisions. His shoes struck the stone with measured clicks. Every guard lowered his eyes. I did not. "Miss Whitmore," he said, his voice quiet enough to sharpen the silence. "Everything entering this house is searched. Then use the scanner. Marco opens every package. Not this one." Marco turned the blade toward the ribbon again. I moved the box behind my back. Adrian stopped 3 feet from me, bringing with him the clean scent of wool and cold air. "You are risking a generous position over a gift." "No, I'm protecting the dignity of the woman you hired me to care for." The fountain pen beside my unsigned contract gleamed beneath the security lamp. One word from him could erase the salary, the medical coverage, and the only practical chance I had to keep my brother's treatment uninterrupted. I pushed the contract toward Adrian anyway. "If employment here requires me to treat Lucia like evidence instead of a person, hire someone else." Marco gave a humorless breath. "She hasn't even met the old woman." "Mrs. Moretti asked the agency for me by name," I said. "She also asked me to bring something private. Your security may verify that it contains no metal, chemicals, or electronics. But no one cuts it open before she does." Adrian's gaze settled on the box. The ivory paper was soft beneath my palm, tied with a faded blue ribbon. Inside lay a bundle of letters Lucia had written during hospice counseling, but had never found the strength to request from storage until now. Their contents belonged to her. A sudden cough traveled down the staircase, thin and ragged, followed by a nurse calling for assistance. Adrian's eyes flicked upward. Mine did not leave his face. "Decide," I said. The words sounded dangerously small in that enormous foyer. He had built a life in which locked doors, searched packages, and frightened obedience kept him in control. Yet Lucia had asked for me, and he could protect her body only by trusting someone with what remained of her privacy. Adrian extended his hand. Marco placed the knife in it. For one breath, the steel flashed between us. Then Adrian folded the blade and returned it handle first. "Scan the box," he ordered. "Do not open it." Marco froze. "Boss, protocol just changed." The scanner hummed over the wrapping, bathing our hands in pale green light. No alarm sounded. I carried the untouched gift upstairs and found Lucia waiting in a warm room scented with lavender, her silver hair spread across a white pillow. Her fingers trembled as they traced the ribbon. From the doorway, Adrian watched her smile before she had even opened it. I signed the contract beside her bed, but Adrian added a condition in his own hand. Elena Whitmore would answer directly to him. When he gave me the pen, his fingers avoided mine. "You won once," he said. I looked past him toward the guards waiting in the corridor. This wasn't about winning. Behind us, Lucia opened the box and whispered Adrian's name. He went still. Whatever she had found inside those letters had just placed the most guarded man in Chicago within reach of a truth he could not command. A porcelain cup struck the floor, and Lucia's scream tore through the lavender-scented room. Coffee spread across the ivory rug while shards skittered beneath the bed. Her monitor chirped faster, each note sharper than the last. I reached her bedside as she clawed at the collar of her nightgown, staring past me toward a darkness only she could see. "Lock the doors," she gasped. "Don't let him take Adrian." Footsteps pounded through the corridor. Adrian entered first, Marco behind him with the house physician and a syringe already uncapped. The silver needle caught the amber lamplight. Lucia recoiled so hard that the bed frame struck the wall. "No needles," she cried. "Hold her still," the physician ordered. Adrian moved toward the bed. then stopped when his grandmother shrank from him. His jaw tightened. Give her the sedative. I stepped between the syringe and Lucia. Turn off the monitor alarm. Her pulse is climbing, the physician said. The sound is driving it higher. Adrian's gaze landed on me, cold and immovable. Do what he says. Look at her hands. Lucia's fingers were clenched around an opened envelope from the ivory box. The paper crackled against her skin as she fought for breath. She isn't resisting treatment. She's trapped in a memory. The physician lifted the syringe again. Adrian caught his wrist. It was the first sudden movement I had seen from him. Wait. The words silenced everyone. In that pause, he risked more than control of the room. If Lucia's condition worsened, every person present would know he had stopped the doctor for a nurse he had met only hours earlier. I lowered the bed rail and sat where Lucia could see me. The linen was warm beneath my palm. The air carried lavender, spilled coffee, and the metallic scent of medication. Lucia, feel the envelope, I said. Tell me what it's made of. Her eyes darted toward mine. Paper. Is it smooth or rough? Rough. Good. Listen to my voice. You're in your bedroom. The lamp is on. Adrian is here. At his name, her breathing caught. Adrian stood beside the curtains. One hand closed around the heavy velvet, as if it were the only solid thing in the room. He was alone, Lucia whispered. I couldn't reach him. Reach him now. I extended my hand toward Adrian without looking away from her. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then his palm entered mine, cool and rigid. I guided it onto Lucia's trembling fingers. The monitor slowed from frantic chirps to evenly spaced tones. Lucia traced his knuckles, counted them softly, and finally released the envelope. There you are, she murmured. Adrian did not answer. He remained bent over the bed after her eyes closed, his thumb resting beneath her wedding ring. Marco led the physician out. No one mentioned the unused syringe. When the door clicked shut, Adrian pulled his hand away and crossed to the window. Chicago's lights burned through the glass, turning his reflection into a dark outline divided by the frame. You disobeyed me again, he said. I treated my patient. You made me stop her doctor. You stopped him. His reflection looked at me before he did. I collected the broken porcelain with a towel, careful not to let the edges cut through. Men who need obedience don't usually change their minds in front of witnesses. You think that was weakness? No. I think you'd rather let everyone believe you have no heart than risk using it and failing. The velvet slipped from his fist. Along the corridor, guards shifted under the white security lights, waiting for his verdict. Adrian could have dismissed me, defended his authority, or ordered every decision returned to his hands. Instead, he picked up the unopened medication vial and placed it inside the bedside drawer. From now on, no one sedates her unless you approve it. The authority in the room changed hands with a quiet click of brass. I turned toward him, but his attention remained on Lucia. His shoulders were square, his face composed, yet he stood beyond the pool of lamplight, close enough to protect her and too far away to be touched. Why did she say you were alone? I asked. Adrian opened the door. Cold corridor air moved between us, carrying cedar smoke from downstairs. Because she is the last person alive who remembers when I wasn't. Then he walked away, leaving me with the first thing he had offered that no contract could demand, the truth. Take me to the lake before this room becomes my coffin. Lucia's words floated through the midnight hush, nearly swallowed by the soft hiss of oxygen. Blue light from the medical monitor washed across her white sheets, while lavender oil and cedar smoke mingled in the warm bedroom air. I checked her pulse, then looked toward the locked door. Adrian's rules were precise. No patient transport after sunset, no departure without an armored escort, and no change in Lucia's location without his written approval. Lucia placed her wedding ring in my palm. I want to hear the water one last time, Elena. Not engines. Not guards. Water. 10 minutes later, I wheeled her through the service corridor with an oxygen cylinder secured beneath a wool blanket. My shoes whispered across cold limestone. A kitchen clock ticked behind us, and the freight elevator groaned down to the underground garage. I had not asked permission. Asking would have turned her final wish into a security meeting. I transferred Lucia into the hospice van, checked her oxygen twice, and drove through the iron gates before the night guards understood what they were seeing. My employment badge remained on the dashboard. If Adrian ended my contract, My brother's next hospital payment would come due without it. I kept driving. Lake Michigan appeared beyond Lake Shore Drive like black glass edged with silver. At a quiet overlook, wind struck the van hard enough to rock it. I wrapped Lucia in 2 blankets and guided her wheelchair onto the concrete path. The air smelled of wet stone and cold metal. Waves slapped the retaining wall below us with slow, hollow booms. Lucia closed her eyes. "That," she whispered. "I wanted to remember that." Headlights swept across the overlook. 3 black SUVs stopped behind the van, doors opening almost in unison. Adrian crossed the pavement without a coat, his charcoal shirt moving in the lake wind. Marco and 6 guards followed, but Adrian raised one hand, leaving them by the vehicles. "You removed her from a secured residence," he said. "Her oxygen is stable, her medication is with me, and the nearest emergency room is 1.8 miles away." That was not permission. No, his gaze shifted to Lucia, whose thin face was lifted toward the spray. "Put her in the SUV." Lucia's fingers tightened around the blanket. I stepped behind her wheelchair. "She has 10 minutes. You have no idea what you risked." "I know exactly what I risked." I removed my badge and held it out. "But your grandmother had less to lose than either of us, and somehow she was the only one being denied a choice." Adrian stared at the badge between us. Behind him, engines idled with a low mechanical growl. Before us, the lake struck stone and withdrew. He could restore his authority with one order. Instead, he turned toward Marco. "Kill the headlights. Move the vehicles back." Marco hesitated. "Boss, the perimeter, now." Darkness reclaimed the overlook as the SUVs reversed. Adrian took the badge from my fingers, slipped it into his pocket, and sat on the freezing concrete beside Lucia's wheelchair. His expensive trousers darkened where the mist touched them. For several minutes, Chicago's most feared man said nothing. Lucia lowered one hand onto his shoulder, and I sat on her other side, close enough to feel Adrian's warmth through the space between our sleeves. "Your mother loved this lake," Lucia said. Adrian watched the horizon. "Love didn't save her." "No," I said, "but losing her didn't prove love was false." A wave burst against the wall, scattering cold droplets across his face. He did not wipe them away. "You speak as if love is a decision." "Most days it is." His eyes met mine in the darkness, stripped of the mansion's marble, guards, and locked doors. Then Lucia began humming, low and unsteady, and Adrian remained beside us until the final note disappeared into the wind. When we returned to the mansion, dawn had silvered the gates. Adrian ordered every record of our departure sealed, then placed my badge back in my hand. "Tonight never happened," he said. "It happened to her." I nodded toward Lucia sleeping in the van. Adrian closed my fingers around the badge and kept his hand there one breath longer than necessary. "Then tomorrow," he said quietly, "you will teach me how to give her another day that belongs to her." For the first time, Adrian Moretti was not commanding me to enter his world. He was asking me to show him a way out of it. 8 o'clock, I said. "No guards in the room." His thumb lifted from my knuckles. "Agreed." The conference room doors slammed hard enough to rattle the crystal water glasses. At 8 o'clock, Elena stood upstairs beside Lucia's bed while winter sunlight warmed the linen and a humidifier released a faint medicinal mist. 2 floors below, 12 members of the Moretti Council faced Adrian across a polished walnut table. A security photograph lay before him. The hospice van parked beside Lake Michigan, its license plate clear beneath a street lamp. The departure was posted to a private traffic monitoring group at 12:43 a.m., one councilman said. By 1:10, people outside this family knew where Lucia was and who took her. Adrian slid the photograph into a leather folder. Elena acted on my authority. Then your authority has become sentimental. Chairs creaked. Ice clicked inside untouched glasses. The council demanded Elena's immediate dismissal, followed by public removal from all Moretti properties. Anything less, they warned, would tell every rival that a nurse could persuade Adrian to abandon protocol. "She leaves before noon," the oldest councilman said, "or we reconsider who is fit to lead this family." Adrian rose. He did not threaten them. He simply took the dismissal order, tore it once, and dropped both halves into the water pitcher. Elena stays. Upstairs, Elena adjusted Lucia's oxygen tubing while piano music played softly from a speaker. Adrian entered alone, shut the door, and placed the lakeside photograph face down on the dresser. Your brother's hospital has been notified, he said. Marco was moving him to a secure floor. Elena's hand stopped above Lucia's medication tray. Why? Someone leaked our route. Her phone vibrated against the mahogany nightstand. The hospital's number glowed on the screen. A charge nurse spoke quickly over the rattle of a medical cart. A man posing as Elena's cousin had attempted to access her brother's room, carrying a bouquet and asking when he would be discharged. Security detained him, but he had left behind a white envelope addressed to Elena. Inside was a photograph of her brother asleep beneath fluorescent light. For words had been written across it. Make Moretti send you away. Elena pressed the phone against her ear until its hard edge whitened her knuckles. Adrian took the medication tray from her before the glass vials could shake against one another. He is unharmed, he said. My people are already there. Your people are why they found him. The leak came from inside my organization, but the target came from standing beside you. Lucia's oxygen machine exhaled steadily between them. Adrian reached for Elena's phone, but she pulled it against her chest. Don't turn my brother into another perimeter you control. This is no longer a discussion. It became one when they used my family to move yours. Adrian crossed to the window. Below, black SUVs rolled through the iron gates, their tires grinding over salt and frozen gravel. The council ordered me to fire you, he said. I refused. Elena looked at the photograph on the dresser, then at Lucia's sleeping face. And what did that refusal cost? Something they believed I valued more than you. The answer settled into the room with the smell of lavender and warm plastic tubing. Adrian had openly protected Elena, not because Lucia required her expertise, but because surrendering her had become unacceptable to him. That choice had stripped away the distance that once kept Elena safe. Her phone rang again. This time, her brother's strained voice came through. Elena, there are armed men outside my door. She moved toward the hallway, but Adrian blocked it with one arm against the frame. Marco will take you to him in an armored vehicle. Move. Not until you understand this. If you leave unprotected, they will follow. And if I stay, they will keep using him. Footsteps gathered outside as Adrian's security detail waited for his command. Elena opened her fist. Lucia's wedding ring, returned after the lake, rested in her palm. She placed it on the dresser beside the photograph. You chose me over your counsel, she said. Now I have until noon to decide whether staying beside you will cost my brother his future. A fountain pen rolled across the dresser and stopped against Lucia's wedding ring. Beyond the windows, pale morning light glazed the frozen lawn, while the oxygen machine breathed softly through air scented with lavender and coffee. Elena picked up the pen, placed her signed resignation on the dresser, and walked past Adrian's arm. You wanted my decision by noon, she said. You have it now. Adrian followed her into the corridor. Marco is waiting downstairs. I'm going to the hospital. Alone. The elevator carried them down through polished silence, its cables humming behind brushed steel walls. Adrian stood beside her without touching her, but his reflection watched her in the dark glass. Your brother's secure floor costs nothing to you, he said. A private medical transport will take him out of Chicago tonight. Cancel both. No. The doors opened onto the foyer, where Marco waited beside an armored SUV visible through the glass entrance. Elena removed her Moretti badge and set it on the brass security table. Its plastic edge clicked against the stone. I resign effective immediately. I refuse the transport, the guards, the secure apartment, and every dollar attached to your name. Adrian's face remained still. Only his right hand changed, closing slowly at his side. Walking away does not make you invisible. Staying makes me useful to anyone who wants to control you. Let me deal with them. You already chose me over your counsel. If I stay, they'll keep forcing you to prove that choice until there's nothing left of either of us. Marco looked toward Adrian, waiting for the order that would stop her. None came. Elena crossed the threshold into air sharp enough to sting her lungs. Salt cracked beneath her shoes. The idling SUV released white exhaust that smelled of gasoline and cold metal. Adrian caught up beside the iron gates. Your brother could lose his treatment if you leave this job. I know. You could lose your apartment. I know. And you believe refusing me will protect him? Elena faced him. I believe disappearing from your life removes the leverage. I won't let my brother become the price of whatever is happening between us. The final words made Adrian's breath pause in the freezing air. For once, he had no command ready. Elena took a cab to the hospital, paid the driver with cash, and entered through a public lobby bright with fluorescent panels. Wheels squeaked across wax tile. The smell of disinfectant caught in her throat as she reached her brother's room and found Marco stationed outside it. "Mr. Moretti ordered me to remain until you arrived," he said. "Then tell him we're leaving without you." Elena signed her brother out against medical advice, arranged continuation of his treatment at a smaller clinic under a payment plan she could barely afford, and wheeled him through the service exit. She left her phone powered off in a lobby charging station and used the last of her emergency savings for 2 bus tickets south. By sunset, Adrian returned to Lucia's room carrying Elena's resignation. Her medical bag was gone. The chair beside the bed stood empty, its cushions still bearing a shallow impression. No footsteps crossed the corridor at medication time. No steady voice corrected the physician. The mansion seemed to amplify every clock, every closing door, every mechanical breath. Lucia opened her eyes and saw the folded paper in Adrian's hand. "You let her leave. She made her choice. So did you." Adrian looked toward the untouched wedding ring on the dresser. He could locate Elena within an hour. He could freeze the bus, surround the station, and bring her back under protection. Instead, he dismissed the guards gathering outside and locked the door against them. "I spent my life believing anyone could be replaced," he said. "Then why are you standing in her room?" Lucia asked. Adrian lowered himself into Elena's empty chair. The lavender had faded, leaving only the sterile smell of oxygen tubing and cold coffee. He pressed Elena's resignation flat across his knee, but the paper shook beneath his palm. For the first time, the man who could purchase loyalty, command fear, and close every road in Chicago understood that bringing Elena back by force would destroy the very thing he wanted from her. "Because she left to save me," he said, "and I don't know how to let her pay that price." The council sold her location. Marco's voice came through the locked bedroom door as the grandfather clock struck midnight below. Adrian opened it to find his security chief holding a tablet whose blue glow sharpened the lines around his eyes. On the screen, payment records connected 2 council-controlled companies to the men tracking Elena's bus. Another message placed her and her brother at a roadside clinic 60 miles south of Chicago. The corridor smelled of cedar smoke and cooling wax. Behind Adrian, Lucia's oxygen machine released its measured hiss. "How long?" Adrian asked. "The clinic closes in 40 minutes. The council's men are already outside." Adrian did not order Elena brought back. He called the council chamber and demanded a secured video conference. 12 faces appeared across the tablet, while Marco projected the clinic's security feed onto the wall. Elena standing beside her brother's wheelchair beneath flickering fluorescent lights, 2 unfamiliar sedans waiting beyond the frosted glass doors. "Withdraw your men," Adrian said. "You surrendered your leverage when you let her leave," the oldest councilman replied. "We are correcting your mistake." Adrian placed 3 black property ledgers on Lucia's dresser. The covers smelled of leather and old tobacco. Their pages controlled Moretti operations on the north side, the lakefront, and the western freight corridor. Together, those territories supplied nearly half his organization's income and the loyalty of hundreds of men. "All 3 districts," Adrian said. "Permanent control, effective tonight." In return, Elena Whitmore and her brother become untouchable. No surveillance, no contact, no retaliation. Silence filled the screen. Marco turned from the projection. "Boss, those territories hold your voting block. Sign them away and the council can remove you." Adrian looked at Elena's empty chair. "Prepare the transfer." At the clinic, a metal shutter began descending over the front windows. Elena pushed her brother toward the rear exit as the hallway lights snapped off 1 row at a time. Cold disinfectant stung her nose. Rubber wheels squealed over tile, and the generator coughed somewhere behind the building. The nurse guiding them stopped when headlights flooded the loading bay. 3 vehicles blocked the alley. Their doors remained closed. Elena locked her brother's wheelchair and stepped in front of him, gripping a steel 4-pole with both hands. Then every phone inside the clinic rang at once. Outside, the sedan headlights went dark. Engine started. The vehicles reversed and disappeared into the night without anyone approaching the door. Elena's temporary phone lit with a single message from Marco. You and your brother are safe. No Moretti protection will follow. The cost has been paid. Back at the mansion, Adrian signed each transfer with black ink. The first signature cost him the lakefront captains. The second severed the freight unions that answered only to him. When the third dried, for councilmen disconnected without acknowledging him, and Marco's secure phone began filling with resignations from men who had sworn lifelong loyalty. Adrian removed the signet ring that marked him as head of the family and placed it beside Lucia's wedding band. The agreement is binding, the councilman said through the speaker. But when the family votes tomorrow, you will stand alone. Then vote. The call ended. Adrian's access to the organization's accounts vanished seconds later. Security monitors throughout the mansion blinked black as council-controlled systems withdrew. In the sudden quiet, Lucia reached for his bare hand. You gave away what your father spent a lifetime building. Adrian watched the last image of Elena vanish from the projection. It was the first thing I ever owned that mattered less than another person. 60 miles away, Elena read Marco's message again beneath the loading bay's harsh white light. A local cab arrived to take her and her brother to a safe motel, paid anonymously but carrying no guards. On the back seat lay Adrian's folded pocket square, charcoal silk marked only by his initials. She pressed it between her fingers, recognizing the texture from the night at the lake. He had protected her freedom by surrendering the power that once defined him, and had asked for nothing in return. At dawn, Marco entered Lucia's room carrying a sealed council notice. Adrian broke the wax beneath gray morning light. The vote removing him would begin at noon, but one line had been added by hand. Surrender the mansion and Lucia's care, or face expulsion before nightfall. Adrian folded the notice once. For Elena, he had already given up his throne. Now the family intended to take the last person who remembered the man beneath it. Gray motel curtains fluttered above a radiator that clicked like a failing clock. Elena unfolded Adrian's charcoal pocket square beneath the buzzing bedside lamp, and a small brass key slipped from its inner seam onto the carpet. A paper tag attached to it bore Lucia's handwriting. Ivory box, lower compartment. Elena's brother slept in the next bed, his breathing steady beneath the hum of the heater. Elena called the mansion. Lucia answered before Marco could take the phone. The letters were never the gift, she whispered. The truth was, bring it before noon. Elena arranged transport for her brother to the clinic, then returned to Chicago alone. At the mansion, the Moretti Council had already confined Adrian to the Walnut Conference Room. Men who had once guarded his door now stood behind his chair, their jackets open and their hands visible near their holsters. The room smelled of cold coffee and furniture polish. Adrian's signet ring rested before the council chairman beside an expulsion order. Transfer Lucia's care and leave the city, the chairman said, or your protection ends when the clock strikes 12. Adrian looked toward the blank security screens. Lucia stays with her physician. Lucia stays with the family. Upstairs, Marco admitted Elena through the service entrance. Lucia waited beneath amber lamplight, the ivory box open on her blanket. The brass key released a false bottom containing a sealed medical file, an insurance report, and a miniature cassette recorder. The paper smelled faintly of dust and camphor. Lucia pressed the recorder into Elena's palm. Adrian was 11 when his mother died. His father told him she chose another man and caused the crash while fleeing. Elena scanned the records. Sedatives had been prescribed under a false name. The vehicle inspection showed its brake line had been deliberately cut. A signed payment ledger connected the mechanic to Adrian's father, Vittorio Moretti. On the cassette, Vittorio's younger voice carried through a veil of static. The boy cannot inherit while he still believes love deserves mercy. Let him think she abandoned him. Grief will make him obedient. Elena's fingers closed around the recorder. Adrian had not rejected love because he had never possessed a heart. His father had built an empire by teaching a grieving child that tenderness caused betrayal. Why keep this hidden? Elena asked. Lucia's wedding ring clicked against the box. Because exposing Vittorio would have killed Adrian when he was still a boy. Silence protected his life and poisoned everything that came after. The conference room clock showed 11:57 when Elena entered. Every head turned. Adrian rose, but the guards moved closer. You shouldn't be here, he said. Neither should the lie that made you who they needed. Elena placed her phone against the walnut table. Marco had connected it to every council member, captain, and family attorney still on the Moretti network. With one touch, she transmitted the records and played Vittorio's confession aloud. Static filled the room, followed by his unmistakable voice. The guards behind Adrian lowered their hands. The council chairman lunged for the phone, but Marco stepped between them. "The files have already been delivered," Elena said. "Removing Adrian now makes every person in this room part of Vittorio's cover-up." At noon, no vote was called. 3 councilmen walked out. 2 tore up the expulsion order. The captains refused instructions until Vittorio answered the evidence publicly. Adrian remained standing, one hand flat against the table as the machinery of his execution stopped around him. Elena had risked her anonymity, her safety, and her brother's fragile future by returning, but she had done what Adrian's power could not. She had given him back the truth of his mother's love. "You came back," he said. Elena met his eyes across the recorder. "You paid for my freedom. I used it to choose you." The words left no command for him to hide behind. Then the conference room's private phone rang. Marco answered, listened, and placed it on speaker. Vittorio's voice emerged, older now, but still edged with control. "Adrian," he said, "come to the lake house alone if you want the truth from my mouth. Bring the evidence, and decide whether you are my son or the weakness your mother left behind." Adrian looked at Elena, then at the proof that had just restored his authority. By nightfall, the father who had taught him to distrust love would be waiting beside the same lake where Elena had first shown him another way to live. Wind drove lake spray against the windows, each impact sounding like gravel thrown at glass. Inside the lake house, a fire snapped behind an iron grate, filling the cedar-paneled room with resinous smoke and dry heat. Adrian entered alone, carrying the copied evidence inside a black leather folder. Vittorio waited beside a chessboard, silver-haired and immaculate, with Adrian's signet ring resting atop the black king. "Close the door," Vittorio said. Adrian obeyed, but left it unlocked. "You wanted the truth from my mouth." Vittorio poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Amber liquid struck crystal, sharp with oak and alcohol. "Your mother planned to take you away. She mistook affection for strength. So you cut her brake line. I preserved your inheritance." Vittorio pushed the signet ring across the chessboard. "The council is fractured. Kill me tonight, destroy Lucia's records, and blame the old men who betrayed you. By morning, every territory returns to your hand. No witnesses, no weakness." A pistol lay beside the White Queen. Adrian picked it up. The metal was cold, its weight familiar. Vittorio stepped away from the fire and opened his arms, offering his chest without a tremor. "Do it. Prove Elena did not make you small." Adrian raised the weapon. Beyond the windows, Lake Michigan churned beneath a moonless sky, the same water beside which Elena had told him love was a decision. Vittorio's reflection hovered in the glass, framed between Adrian's sights. One pull of the trigger would end the man who murdered his mother. It would also restore the empire Adrian had spent his life defending, erase the council's leverage, and bury every record that could lead prosecutors back to him. His finger tightened. Then Elena's words returned without sound. "I used my freedom to choose you." Adrian lowered the pistol. "My mother tried to save me from becoming you," he said. "I won't make her death complete." Vittorio's mouth hardened. He lunged for the weapon, but Adrian removed the magazine, cleared the chamber, and sent both pieces sliding across the hardwood in opposite directions. No blood followed, only the hollow scrape of steel and Vittorio's suddenly uneven breathing. "You think mercy will give you a future?" Vittorio demanded. "No." Adrian opened the leather folder. "The truth will cost me the future you built." Headlights swept across the windows. Car doors closed outside, followed by measured footsteps on the stone porch. Vittorio turned toward the sound as Adrian placed Lucia's records, the payment ledgers, the vehicle report, and the cassette into the hands of Assistant U.S. Attorney Rachel Bennett, who entered with federal agents. Marco remained outside the property line, honoring Adrian's decision to face the consequences without Moretti protection. "These documents implicate my father," Adrian said. "They also identify businesses, accounts, and operations under my command. You receive all of it together." Bennett studied him. "You understand this may dismantle your organization and expose you to prosecution?" Adrian removed the watch stamped with the Moretti crest and set it beside the signet ring. "That is why I came. Agents escorted Vittorio toward the door. The old man stopped beside his son, firelight sharpening the fury in his eyes. She will leave when she sees what you are without power. Adrian looked at the abandoned chessboard. Then she will be free to leave. That is what love requires. Vittorio was taken into the blue-white glare outside. Adrian remained and signed the cooperation agreement, surrendering his accounts, properties, legal immunity, and authority. By dawn, federal warrants had frozen the Moretti empire. Adrian stepped onto the porch with no guards, no weapon, and no certainty that he would remain free. Elena waited beyond the federal vehicles in the freezing mist. She had not come to rescue him. She had come to witness his choice. Adrian stopped several feet away. I gave them everything, he said. I may lose the mansion. I may face charges. I have nothing left to offer you. Elena crossed the distance and placed Lucia's wedding ring in his open palm. Then offer me the man who lowered the gun. For the first time, Adrian closed his hand around a symbol of love instead of power. Behind him, the lake house filled with agents cataloging the ruins of his old life. Ahead stood Elena, and the terrifying question no empire had taught him to answer. Could he build a future with nothing but the truth? 1 year later, the smell of fresh bread drifted through a small brick house 6 miles from Lake Michigan. Morning light moved across oak floors while a kettle murmured in the kitchen. Adrian stood beside Lucia's hospice bed, reading aloud from one of her preserved letters. No guards outside the door, and no signet ring on his hand. His cooperation had dismantled the Moretti organization. Vittorio awaited trial. The council had dissolved, and Adrian had accepted probation, restitution, and permanent separation from every criminal enterprise he once controlled. The mansion was gone. In its place stood this rented house and a legitimate freight consulting business whose first quarterly statement lay folded beneath Lucia's medicine chart. Elena entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. Her younger brother's treatment was continuing at a Chicago medical center, funded now through insurance from Elena's new hospice position, not Moretti money. Adrian closed the letter as Lucia stirred. You skipped the last sentence, she murmured. You were asleep. I am dying, not deaf. Her dry whisper made Elena lower her cup to hide a smile. Adrian returned to the page. His voice caught once, then steadied. Love is not the chain that holds you to another person. It is the door you leave open when they are free to walk away. Lucia reached toward them. Elena took one hand. Adrian took the other. By sunset, Lucia's breathing had softened until the oxygen machine seemed louder than the room. Snow tapped lightly against the window, and lavender warmed in a ceramic dish beside her bed. She looked at Adrian, then at Elena. Don't build another fortress, she whispered. Build a home. Her fingers loosened between theirs. Adrian remained beside the bed through the long silence that followed, his forehead resting against Lucia's hand. Elena did not pull him upright or hide his tears from the hospice physician. She simply stayed until he raised his head on his own. 3 months later, Adrian took Elena to the lakeside overlook where Lucia had once asked for 10 stolen minutes. Spring water struck the retaining wall below them, and the wind carried the smell of rain and wet stone. There were no SUVs behind them, no men waiting for orders. Adrian opened his palm. Lucia's wedding ring rested beside a smaller ring that had belonged to his mother, its gold worn smooth with age. I spent most of my life believing love was a debt, he said. Something people collected when they found your weakest place. Elena watched him without reaching for the ring. And now, Adrian lowered himself onto one knee. The concrete darkened beneath his trousers, just as it had the first night they sat there together. Now I know it is a choice I must keep making when fear would be easier. He held the ring toward her, but his hand remained open. Marry me, Elena. Not because I protected you, not because you returned, and not because either of us owes the other a future. Marry me as my equal, with your own work, your own name, and every door unlocked. Elena's eyes held his for a long moment. Then she crouched until they were level. One condition. Name it. We never confuse love with ownership. Adrian slid his mother's ring onto her finger. Agreed. Elena kissed his forehead and drew him to his feet. Behind them, the city moved without fear of his name. Ahead, the lake opened beneath a clear horizon. Adrian had once lowered a gun for the possibility of a future, but now he made the harder choice with full knowledge of its cost. He placed his unguarded heart in Elena's hands and trusted her freedom to hold it. In that day, the man who had ruled through fear finally learned that love was not surrender. It was the courage to stand beside someone without owning them.